Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Hamline Leo lecture. My name is Molly Glevy, and I work in the Alumni Relations Office here at Hamline, and I'm so pleased to have an alum with us today, Steve Gernes, class of 2010, speaking on From Inspiration to Impact, the Creative Process in Music and Media. I'll do a few little introductory items and then hand everything over to Steve. So bear with me. I know we all know this, but as you know, you're muted and your camera is off for today's presentation. If you have a question for Steve, go ahead and put those questions into the Q&A at any time. He may catch some questions during the talk, or he may answer some at the end, but if you have something that comes up, don't feel like you have to wait until you throw it into the Q&A. If you have any other notes for us or any sort of logistic issues you want us to look into or something like that, go ahead and use the chat. We'll find it wherever you put those things. And I am going to go ahead and introduce Steve so he can take it away. Steve Gernes, Hamline University Class of 2010, is an Emmy Award-winning Minnesota-based composer for video games, film, television, and theater. His passion is looking for new and exciting ways to create music for visual media in order to build unique scores that not only serve the project, but bring it to whole new levels. One of his favorite things is finding those strange in-between places that tug at seemingly disparate parts of your mind and dwelling in that beautifully disconcerting place. Steve, with that, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Molly. And I'm gonna bring up my slideshow here. And yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'd like to thank Molly and Hamlin for having me on here, and it's a great honor. I only think of Hamlin fondly. I went from Hamlin for 2006 to 2010, and it was absolutely fantastic, which I'll get into some more in a little bit. Uh, but yeah, this is a general overview of what I'll be going over today, what it's like working in the entertainment industry for music for visual media in particular, different projects I've worked on, the nature of being creative in a commercial venture, which should be a very tricky labyrinth to navigate. How to be true to your creative self, what the collaborative process is like working with different artists or for clients, directors, producers, all that kind of thing, and tips for creating a sustainable career in the arts, which I think is a really big, burnout, all those kind of things. It's a really big topic. So we'll start off with a little bit of my background. And so I grew up in the Twin Cities. I still live in the Hamlin Midway area with my wife, and we love it, absolutely love it there. Uh, I did childhood piano lessons a couple years behind my sister. My sister was always the really good one. We did Suzuki method, which uh, the older I've gotten, the more I've come to appreciate it. I wasn't for a long time I was really bad at reading music because it's all by ear, but I think that has really served me well over time. I played trombone in elementary school at Randolph Heights here, and then through junior high at Hidden River, now it was Ramsey. And then I went to Central, started playing guitar and bass guitar, because all my friends were playing guitar, and got into the audio tech class. Uh, and that was kind of my first taste of real music tech, working with Pro Tools, working with manipulating audio, all that kind of music software stuff. And it really took off from there. So by the time I got to Hamlin in 2006, I had already spent quite a bit of my own money on music software. I think mostly I was still in Pro Tools then, and Reason and all that kind of stuff, and lots of synthesizers and all kinds of things. And Hamlin was just a fantastic experience there. And I'm so glad I did the CLA education. I had such fantastic professors all throughout, and in particularly in the music department. And like Janet Green was amazing. She was also my advisor, so I'm sure I put her through some interesting interesting times. It was a very non-traditional student, and it was kind of probably hard to wrangle me a little bit. And I had a fantastic, just amazing private composition instructor there named Ed Marcus, who lives in Portugal now. But Ed is just an amazing musician, amazing inspirational teacher, and really helped me uh, get into the process of writing. It sounds funny, but writing for actual people, instruments to play. I'd never done that before. Never for even small ensembles. That was all new in undergrad. And the longer I went through Hamlin, the more and more I got into writing and writing music, and I always was fascinated with scoring a picture. I would like rip scenes from old DVDs and just, cut the audio out and write music to them. Usually old 80s sci-fi and fantasy movies, but that that was just my thing. I loved doing that. And then yeah, once I finished up at Hamlin, I got obsessed with getting into the University of Southern California program, which they had back in 2012, 2013, was a 1 year special certificate graduate program. So 20 people get in every year, and you do just, you know, that's probably one of the most packed years I've ever had. It's mostly you're in the same classes with all 20 people. You do scoring and recording sessions, and you build up to like I think we had a 100-piece orchestra at Warner Brothers at the end, which is amazing. You only have 13 minutes to record in every session, so you have to get everything right. But that was huge. I met so many great friends there. I'm still friends with and still work with to this day. And I got an assistantship right out of USC from a composer who was working in LA, and I did that for a year. And composer assistantships for that kind of thing are pretty tend to be pretty intense. It's would typically work 6 to 7 days a week. I would get in at 9 in the morning and stay till whenever, every day usually. A year was plenty enough for that. I did learn a ton. I did learn a ton about working on TV series, movies, how to stay organized, how to work with clients, all that kind of thing. And after I was done with that, I worked just freelance stuff out there. I worked with some of my friends on a Netflix show called Chef's Table, and we did that for about a year and a half, like 16 episodes of that. And eventually I just missed home too much. I missed the Midwest family, friends. I missed seasons. I missed winter. I know it's crazy, but feel more connected to nature. So yeah, I moved back, and I've been freelancing here since then. Um, and here are some of the projects I've worked on. So I'm not going to go over all of these in detail, but there are so many different types and more all the time of visual media to work on. So there's something like the Blue Zone series, which is that 4-part Netflix series. These are feature documentaries off the rails and Body Slam. I've done some trailer music, some video games. Mm, this so HBO series, this Obajima project was really cool because actual play and D&D tabletop play is bigger than ever these days, and I did a soundtrack to accompany. It's not released yet, but to accompany a Studio Ghibli Legend of Zelda inspired Dungeons and Dragons kind of campaign, which was you know absolute dream come true. But all that to say is there are so many different types of things out there to make music for. And yeah, now that you know a little bit about my background, I kind of want to dive into the crux of what I do, which is how to craft music for visual media. And I'll briefly walk through the tools I use. I won't get into too much of the nitty gritty unless people have specific questions. I'm happy to. I could dork out over music tech and gear all day, every day, but I'll only skim the surface here. How you approach a feature length film, how you approach, 4 hours plus of a TV show, that kind of thing. How do you break down episodes? How do you break down a game for music? How do you stay organized? How do you make sure to keep up on everything you need to keep up with as a freelancer? And I'll also break down Q, one of the Blue Zones Qs I did with my two friends, Duncan Toom and Tyler Sabag. So, like I said, there's all kinds of things involved, but to go right at the beginning, it's, how do you work with the client? How do you find your clients? How do you meet like-minded people? Uh, how do you make sure they're getting the professional products that will make them happy, that you can be proud of? And once you've met those people and land the gig, how do you start? How do you start the conversation of what kind of music they want? Sometimes you can run the whole range of things. Sometimes people know pretty specifically what they want. Sometimes people have no idea and are really open to trying tons of things. And neither one is better. They all have their different processes. Some people are more open to trying things. Some people want to play it pretty safe. You kind of get to know somebody when you're working with them like that and get to know their comfort zone. Music can be a really extraordinarily abstract thing to talk about, and so if you don't have a lot of practice talking about it, it can be really intimidating. So part of the process is also making sure a client you're working with feels comfortable and heard in that process, never talked down to or anything, and also knowing that people like me, you can criticize the stuff I do. You could say you don't like something. That's all part of the process. Not going to hurt my feelings. Actually, that's a really vital part of the process to know if you don't like something. Because if you're starting out with a blank slate, you have to gauge somebody's taste from somewhere. Um, yeah, and these are some screenshots of some of the tools I use. These are DAWs, Bitwig, and Reaper. This one in the background, that's kind of the table, is this really cool app called QDB, which a friend of mine went to school with, Sebastian Ornemark, made for composers, and it's basically a database where you can make projects and project archives. You can break down TV episodes, feature length film, video game stuff, have it all organized, have all your version numbers, everything archived so you can look back. And you also have a way for directors, producers, anybody, editors, anybody who wants to give you notes and approval on stuff. You can choose what they see and they can give you notes, and you have access to all the versions. They can download stuff and watch stuff from there. It's really cool. Um, yeah. And so, what do you do when you're starting a project and you don't know what music your client wants? Well, usually for film or TV, sometimes for games, though, you would think of it more as reference music. Is there temp music? Have they edited to temporary tracks that they've put in? So, say, take a feature length film, editors will work forever on stuff, and typically they want to edit to musical beats. Um, Something to give it an emotional arc, also something to give their cuts natural pacing. And they don't have any of your music yet that you've made. And unless it's all source, which is stuff they're putting in that's going to be there for keeps, and they'll pay for licensing separately, they want to put temporary stuff in there to get a feel for how things are working. Now, sometimes it's that temporary music, or we'll just call it temp music, is just there for structure, and your client will want you to completely disregard everything is there. And sometimes they're like, this is pretty much what we want. Can you do something that sounds really similar? It runs the whole range, and it'll sound funny, but these people are, my experience, editors, producers, and directors on this stuff, by the time music comes in, which is at the end, they're so busy and typically past their deadlines. It can be difficult to get the information, even such basic information like, do you like the temp music? Because they're so busy, they have so many things on their plate. If you can get that information, it helps a ton. If you can't, there's other ways to figure it out. But having that always helps a lot. And if you were say we were starting, like say we started on this Blue Zone series, so we get together, we watch, typically we just have one pretty rough cut of the first episode, and we need to figure out, well, first watch it, get a feel for it, get a feel for what they're trying to say, hear their temp music in there. If there's notes on their temp music, cool. We could start thinking about different scenes, but then we'll probably break down the whole episode and say, what are the big emotional or theme families this episode has? And this is beyond instrumentation or anything like that, genre, but we're like, what are the big theme and emotional families? What are they really trying to say? And then we'll go into an app like QDB and mark them with colors. All this stuff will change as you go by, but it's just a good way to kind of plant your feet and be like, okay, we're figuring things out. And then once you have those figured out, if the edit is in pretty good shape, uh, we can, like, sorry, lost the train of thought. Then we'll be like, are there core cues? Uh, are there core cues to address that will be each of like the seeds for each family? Because sometimes there will be one big cue. It might be at the end, but like it will influence all the others that say came before it, and you want things to be thematically related. And then we kind of just go from there. We try things. We try lots of things, particularly in particular if a client doesn't know exactly what they want, which is pretty common. You try lots of stuff. Hopefully, you'll do some sketches and that kind of thing if they're comfortable with that. If they're comfortable with that, you can save yourself a lot of work by not doing lots of recording up front and lots of labor. And you kind of get a feel for what they're looking for. You start spreading it out, you start jumping around the episode, and you keep going. um, Another thing you do if you're stuck, which we do a lot, if it's kind of a nebulous scene, they don't really know what they want, and your client needs some help figuring it out, you could throw any kind of random music on there. Not random, of course, with thought, but like you could try lots of different things because you never know how a scene is going to feel under a different type of music, which this is just a great method to do if you're stuck. You're like, I don't really know what they're trying to say with this scene. They don't really know yet either. Maybe we'll find out by throwing lots of stuff at it. And this process can keep going. You'll go back. You'll have different producers, different directors, and people who will come in at different times. And part of it is gauging where you're at in the process, which is really abstract, but yeah. So we were just talking about how do you approach scoring a film or a series from scratch, how to begin, where to start. We talked about how to break down a film or episode or game into manageable pieces. And a big part of it is how do I make all these pieces into something that feels like a cohesive whole? Uh, that doesn't mean it's going to be a really homogeneous score and everything sounds really similar. But yeah. And a good example I have for this one is Blue Zones. And that one I did last spring. Was that last spring? Okay, it was a little bit ago, but we did it with my friends Duncan Toom and Tyler Sabag, and we actually won an Emmy for the music for this, which was really, really, really awesome. And this is a director we've worked before, this guy named Clay Jeter. We worked with him on the Chef's Table series. We worked with him on this thing for Lexus, the car company. They did a documentary. He's a really great guy. We worked with the editor too, but we hadn't worked with the production company, so we had new people to get to know and learn their taste because they also get to weigh in on music. So I chose a scene, one of the first cues, and this is one of my cues from the Blue Zones. And we're starting the series. We don't know exactly what they're looking for. We haven't had a chance to talk with them too much because they're really busy. And once we got a chance to talk with them, we were like, okay, this scene is one of the first ones in the first episode. It's setting up the series. What do they want? what do they want the general, like the series to feel like? What's the purpose of the scene? Is it launching us into the series? How do we want people to feel starting a 4-episode arc? Um, and what they wanted for this particular scene, as a Stan Buettner walking around and talking about blue zones and his investigations into these areas where, there's centenarians and the longest lived people on the planet, um, they really wanted like an investigatory, mysterious, interesting intrigue, adventure kind of thing. Something with a little energy, something with a little intrigue to push us forward. And you'll probably notice once we'll watch it on the next slide, this little clip, that the music is really soft. This is from the final cut of this that was on Netflix, not one of the cuts we worked through with the music turned up. And this is a documentary series, right? So there's a lot of dialogue, and dialogue is absolutely king, which I'm not salty about at all. It should be. People need to know, people need to hear and understand what's happening. Music should not get in the way of that. There's a lot of different methods for approaching dialogue heavy scenes or series or movies. Typically, I've found, and working with my friends and colleagues, that you don't want to be too timid, because music will always get turned down at the mixing stage, which is just normal part of the process. Obviously, you don't want to do anything too brazen that gets in the way of the dialogue. You want to serve the scene, the emotions, the story above all else. You want your music to elevate everything that's happening on screen more than your client could have ever hoped for. That's the goal. So you notice that the music is pretty low in here, so you have to pick your spots. Blue Zones is a very dialogue heavy series. You really have to pick your spots of where you could get your moments. You have to be careful not to do anything too big. If you do anything too big or clashy in dialogue frequency range, it will get turned down. It probably won't get approved, but if it does, it'll get turned down at the mixing stage. So you have to be very strategic about it. And yeah, with that, let's see, we should watch this guy. So this is about a 2-minute scene. This is one of the cues I did. Um, and if you watch this thinking this is how the series starts, there's one cold open cue before this, and then a little ambient one, and then this is the big one that should launch us in. Looking for a little mystery, a little intrigue. The music is low, nothing like that's all normal, but I figured it best for context to do a real life situation. So we'll play it here. Oops. So I guess the sound is not, let me see. Did I, is the sound not working for that one? Let me see. We had it working before. Where you have to share this. Shoot. Okay.
And
I
Steve,
will
I can
get
try
there.
to look at the settings too.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's see. Where were you in Zoom? Share computer sound. Advanced sharing options. I don't think I have, interesting. I don't think I have access to the sound stuff.
Steve, we'll work on this end and see what we can come up with. If you want to keep going, we can kind of see if we can find that setting.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so I'll just keep going and we could come back to that if we get it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. So kind of once you've got the technical side of things down, there's a lot of stuff to take care of in that end. It's a very tech heavy career, unless you're like John Williams, who can pretty much do most things at the piano. Most of us aren't. So we're pretty heavily computer invested. Like I'm a dork. I build my own computers. I do all that stuff. Um, was a Mac guy, switched to PC. That's a whole thing. They're both great. It's all pretty homogenous nowadays. But yeah, there's your computer hardware to keep up on, so much software, digital audio workstation, which is like your hub for making everything. I use like Reaper and Bitwig for mine, but I've used Logic and Cubase in the past. So many great tools. There's a bajillion sample libraries for orchestral stuff, any kind of instrument you want, real instruments, hardware, everything under the sun. There's it never stops. And you refer to that as GAS, which is gear acquisition syndrome, which is super real. Uh, but once you've got kind of all that stuff down, the next thing is so say you're starting to get gigs in the entertainment industry, you're starting to branch out more. How do you stay creative and authentic in a commercial industry? Oh, okay. So I'm the host now. We'll give this a shot. Let me see. Uh, Let me know. We'll go back to this Blue Zone scene. Let's see if we get some sound here. No sound. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna look at one more. Okay. Share. Interesting. Well, we might just have to skip that. I'm getting I see the boxes for sharing sound and video, but it's grayed out. So sadly, I think I'll just have to skip that part. Sorry, folks. It's okay
I'll
though.
keep I'll keep trying, and if I can come up with something, I'll chat you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, staying creative, like creative and feeling authentic in a commercial, you know, industry. You're working for clients. It's a service to a certain extent. Um, and how do you make a living while still feeling like you're doing something that fills your creative cup? Because like me, like a lot of people, you did music for fun way before it was ever a career job, anything you were getting money for. Um, you know, how do you build your portfolio while still trying to make a living? How do you know what direction to push in and what to spend your time on? How do you fill your creative cup when working on extremely restrictive projects? Like that last one, and it took me a while, I'm still learning it, on really restrictive projects where, say, they want a very specific sound or they want a very safe musical score, which is, all good. There's a wide range of things to do and work on. But if you're doing that and you're committed and you're like, I'm going to do this, I want to work with this client, I want to work on this project. I've typically found that finding one little thing, trying to find at least one little thing in there that's you can really dig into and be like, I'm going to really sink my teeth into this. I'm going to really work on my synth patches. I'm going to work on this production aspect of things. I'm going to try to get these little writing techniques in. I'm going to try something new for me. And typically that's enough. Like if you're saying, no, it has to be a pretty traditional chord progressions, it has to be pretty traditional arrangement, it has to be a pretty safe track. You got to try to find something in there that fills your cup. Um, the other things like how to build your portfolio while still trying to make a living is a really big one. Because you're a freelance artist, you're doing this for a job, you need to make money and take care of yourself and your family. If the common trap is taking casting a really wide net and taking everything that comes in, which is a completely viable strategy. But the tricky thing with that is you very much will get out what you put in. So, say I'm doing lots of romantic comedy music. This is a story I heard from somebody who's a composer who I met when I was in LA, and he was working with another composer, and they were like, okay, they were getting lots of romantic comedy gigs. This guy was not, that was not his jam, that was not his thing, but it was work. He was, making money, making music. And he did that for kind of years. And he was like, I just can't, I got to do something different. He goes out to try to get new stuff. His portfolio, his demo reel is full of rom-com music. And everybody's like, you're the rom-com guy. You do that stuff. And he's going, well, I could do all this other kind of stuff. And I'm really passionate about it, but you haven't had time to fill your reel with those things. And well, you may know you could do those things. You can't blame a bunch of other people for looking at your reel and seeing a bunch of rom-com stuff on there and going, oh, like that's your thing. Uh, so I wouldn't say careful is not the right word. Don't be careful what you fill up your reel with, the stuff, the projects you work on. But if you have the luxury of being a little deliberate, it will help you a lot. And people tend to there's something really romantic about hiring a specialist who is an artist who specializes in a certain genre or something, rather than a media composer who does everything. Both completely viable careers. It's not a dig on anything, but I found for the kind of work I want to get, I really like doing sci-fi and fantasy stuff, for instance. You know, the more time I could spend on that kind of music and the more I could put out into the world, be it for money or not, will help attract those things in future. In that kind of that brings me to a really interesting story I had from when I went to USC. So USC is a really interesting program. I talked about it a little bit before, but we had lots of cool, awesome speakers. Lots of big composers. We got to have like Alan Silvestri come in, who's like done so many things from like the Avengers back to like the Abyss in the 80s and that kind of stuff. It's great. We had, James Newton Howard, so many amazing people. We get learn a lot of stuff. But I think my favorite, and this stuck with me forever, my favorite was we had the composer Austin Wintry, who went to USC maybe 10 years before I did, who's done lots of game music, really cool game music. The guy can write music like crazy. And he came in and just gave us the most genuine advice I think I got in that entire year there. And this screenshot here is, for those who don't know, the lighting the beacons from Lord of the Rings. Um, the beacons are lit, that kind of thing. And people are asking for advice. You see somebody who's successful doing stuff, particularly stuff you would like to do, and you're like, how did you do that? How did you meet those people? How did you get those gigs? And his advice for all of us was, what is your beacon? What do you want to project into the world? What is it that you're really, really passionate about? There's so many different avenues you could pursue. You could do everything under the sun, every different genre. You could try to do everything, but it's like, what do you really, really like doing? What lights your fire? What keeps you going? What gives you that kind of like that's my thing. I would do that all day, every day. And it's like find that thing for yourself and like push relentlessly to put that out into the world. Light a beacon for that thing that you want. The only way you'll ever meet the people you want to meet or like let those people know that you exist is by putting that stuff out into the world. Like people will it's extraordinarily rare, extraordinary, like not magically just find you and you'll get an email being like, we want your stuff. Like it takes a lot of agency. It takes a lot of go out and put your sound into the world, all those kind of things to say. And he was like, The thing about trying to do lots of things all at the same time is if you're doing something, of course, if you're desperate for the money and you need to do it, you're going to do what you have to do. But like if you have the luxury to kind of direct your career in the direction you want, uh, do the thing you're extraordinarily passionate about. Because if you're trying to do a bunch of other things, everything all at the same time, there are going to be people who that's their thing. That's their jam. They do that all day, every day. They're going to be more passionate about that. They're going to have more energy for that, and they'll probably end up doing better work for that given project than you would. It's never a guarantee, but it's so important because there's such a vast multitude of different types of projects to work on. And it'd be really intimidating to be like, what do I put out into the world? Um, and this helps differentiate yourself from other music makers and show you who you are, your genuine self. People will always like people will always gravitate towards that. Eventually you will meet like-minded, passionate people. And you can get on projects that last months to years. Um, it's this is a career that takes a whole like it's a you know as much time as possible. You spend a lot of your own money on your own gear, all those kind of things, all up to you. So it's like if you can, you might as well try to spend it on something that's your thing, you're endlessly passionate about. um yeah, so we'll go to the next one, which is, yeah, balancing art and business. And being a freelance artist isn't just about creating. While it is very easy to be like, I have a project right now, I just want to make music, I just want to do all that stuff, I want to put the blinders on and just do my favorite thing, which is create music. It's also by balancing the business and organizational sides. And there's no silver bullet for any of this. There's no silver bullet for meeting the right people, networking, or all those things, which is things you can do to point you in the right direction. Yeah, and seems you have to do all the things as a freelance artist. Like I do have a composer agent who helps me with stuff, but like you need to go get it yourself too. There's no, getting an agent isn't like they go get you a bunch of gigs and you can just like sit at home and do your work. It's you need to do your part. So you need to be networking, you need to be maintaining things on social media. Mostly I've been using LinkedIn for all of its faults. LinkedIn's actually a really good place to meet very specific people working in different industries, be it film, TV, games. um, I found it better than Instagram or anything like that. That's actually been really good. Uh, so you need to be keeping that stuff up to date, which I could always be better be better at. Letting people see your face, being visible, showing people you're a professional. Trying to reach out to people who you would like to work with, trying to expand your network. You could go to game conferences if you're working in games. You could go to film festivals or all that kind of thing. Like this is a screenshot. Like I went to GDC, um, the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco a couple years ago, and that was really cool. Met a lot of people there. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things to keep track of. So typically in any given week as a freelance music maker, freelance composer, you're hopefully working on your current project or probably juggling multiple. So there's, priority of what needs to be done first. So that's like the writing, the really fun stuff. Social networking, in-person networking, keeping your website updated, keeping your demo reel updated, doing cold call emails, doing outreach to former clients, doing outreach to potential new clients that maybe you've talked to a couple times, uh, you know, and trying to figure out any way to let people know you exist in the most genuine way possible. Because all these things have to be sustainable, otherwise, it could crash and burn really, really hard. Um, and like I lived in LA for about 5 years, and I met a lot of people and a lot of great friends and worked with on a lot of cool projects. But it's a digital world. You could work remotely from like I work here with lots of California people. I work with people like all around the world. Like on Blue Zones, we had a 24-piece string session and to record, and we recorded it in Stockholm, Sweden, remotely because we've worked with them before, and it's great. And we do a lot of that stuff. And often you'll hire soloists from anywhere around the world who typically have a pretty good setup in their house. You just give them the sheet music, the reference tracks, some notes. They'll record stuff for you, send it back. You get it mixed in. There you go. So you could do anything from anywhere pretty much. And yeah, my next slide is about, sorry, abrupt transition there. Once you're working with a client on any given project, how to successfully work with them, how to make them the most happy, how to just make it a good relationship in general. And these all seem, and they're all super ridiculously extremely obvious, but like I can't stress how important they are. So, particularly if it's a client that has not worked with you before, and maybe you've only had a couple calls with them or something, they don't know you that well yet. You want to make sure to communicate really well, respond promptly, make sure if anything comes up, if there's going to be a delay, if you have questions, reach out. Like it's it's really obvious, but you know, it's a team sport, it's a collaboration, and you want the music making process, which is typically a small part of your client's overall. They have a lot on their plate. Music is just a small part of it. You want to make it as frictionless for them as possible. And the next one is openness and patience, which again, obvious, but uh, your client may not know what they want at all, and that's just fine. And being patient with them through the process of you're finding out what the music should sound like together. Uh, and that can have a lot of trial and error. You might toss a lot of music. It happens all the time, completely normal. Um, I don't think of it as wasted effort. Like anything you could do to get closer to the sound or get closer to a place where they're comfortable communicating about what they think is working about the music or what isn't. Because there's so many variables involved. And that's the next one, which is bring solutions, anything you can to make it as easy as possible for them. Uh, you don't want to be the source of issues for them. Like particularly if you want to have these clients come back to you in the future, you want to always bring solutions. Obvious again, but like so important. And the last one, smiley face, is be nice. Like you might be working with people for a long time on a given project, talking to them almost every day. You'll be getting criticism from them on stuff. You'll be getting, like revisions, notes, rewrites, and you get to be nice about all of it and open, not take anything personally, and, keep going. They have a lot going on. And if you could do your best to only bring solutions and ease the friction for them in the music making process, it's all for the better. And yeah, this this is a really interesting one. So tips for creative sustainability and success. Success is an interesting way to put it, but the sustainability part is really important. You know, these are things I've learned along the way that help me stay focused, creative, grounded, and avoiding burnout is a big one, especially when you get into crunch, really hard deadlines on stuff. How do you avoid how do you avoid the crash and burn? If you've been on a really intense project for a lot of time that has a lot of extra work hours, how do you like get ready for the next one? Like how do you psych yourself up kind of thing? So this is some of the stuff we talked about already, but like to be absolutely relentless, excuse me. There will be a lot. You'll always get tons. It's any creative venture. You'll always get a ton You'll have people that like your stuff, you'll have people that don't, you'll get lots of criticism, you'll face lots of rejection. It's not a meritocracy. Lots of things are being in the right place at the right time, uh, sometimes just who you know, that kind of thing. But you could do so many things to help your chances of bringing those things about. So like being completely relentless, don't let yourself get too down for too long, and just keep going, keep making music, keep trying to improve, keep learning, stay passionate about it. And a big part of that is trying to work with like-minded, passionate people. Just like, potential clients will see you're passionate about their project, their passion about making a certain type of music, anything like that. It goes both ways. So, if you have a really passionate clients who are into it, they're excited about music, they're excited to talk to you about what their project's about and what they want to get across, that, at least for me personally, that can really fill your cup. And it really is a team sport. We are freelance musicians doing this kind of thing, but it's never kind of like, oh, I'm just throwing music at you, you get what you get kind of thing. It's like, oh, we're going to collaborate, we're going to go back and forth, we're going to do all these things, and we're going to do it, we're going to find out your sound together. Um, and that's the next one, which is the solution to client problems, which we were talking about. Like, hate to say the word friction again, but it's like, yeah, make music as easy as possible and enjoyable as possible for them, to interact with and deal with. And again, back to the find your beacon. Um, what you put out there is what you'll get more of. Really obvious, but you know, if you can fill your demo reel, if you can get those projects doing your kind of thing, you'll get more of those things. Like and if that's what you're passionate about, people will notice. Like people really will notice. And that brings me to my next one, which is always be learning, always be uncomfortable. I know that if I'm personally making music and it feels easy, I'm doing something wrong. It means I'm trotting down really well-worn pathways. Like I've gotten like this method or technique or this whatever combination of factors is too comfortable. It's something I've done before. I don't ever want that. You should always kind of be, at least for me personally, be in that vulnerable space where you're like, I don't know, I don't know everything. Like I'm good at this, but there's an infinitude, and there will always be an infinitude for me left to learn. And that can be a vulnerable, uncomfortable place to be like, I'm trying new things and I'm not great at it right away. And it would just be easier to go back to methods and techniques that I've done before. But it's hard for me to see, let's see, to see the point. Like I always want to be improving, always absorbing new techniques and information. Uh, be okay and like dwell in that vulnerable state, which is you're like, I don't know how this particular cue is going to turn out, but I'm going to try this. Of course, all this is in the context of like serving the project's needs and all that, not just doing whatever weirdo stuff you want to do. But it's, no one's an expert on absolutely everything. Just because you're not adept at something right away, or now, doesn't mean it's not worth your time. There's always something to pick up. um, it's like never ever be satisfied, always keep reaching, always keep improving. um, and for me, that could be lots of things, and these are also methods that could get you out of like creative ruts. uh, wouldn't really call it writer's block, I would more call it creative ruts, that kind of thing. It's like, try new synthesizers, try new software, try new playing new instruments, try new writing techniques, listen to some tracks you really like of artists you admire and be like, what's one or two things I could take from this? Or look at some scores and be like, what are one or two things I could take for this? Doesn't have to be everything, but like, what is it? And even though I'm not like really good at it now, just go for it. Try to endlessly learn, endlessly learn. And yeah, these are some quotes that help keep me motivated along the way. I'm a big Frank Herbert fan, But yeah, it is so shocking to find out how many people do not believe that they can learn and how many more believe learning to be difficult. And the capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, the willingness to learn is a choice. And the last one, which is an Aesop Rock one, is comfort is a crumb, as in a crumb from the table. Um, I always try to keep these things in mind, even under big time crunch, which you'll eventually get to on almost all projects, particularly TV. TV is like the epitome of crunch time for getting stuff done. This music comes at the end, and typically people are over schedule already. So you're like, all right, this is where we come in. Here we go. Um, but yeah, never staying too comfortable. Always learn, always absorb, always be reaching out for new things. Um, yeah, those ones stick with me big time. And yeah, this is just my thank you. So like I'll do some questions now if people have questions. I have a little bit of time left, so I could talk some things over. But um, one of the questions I got was if you had to pick, what would you say is the most challenging media to craft music for and why? Hmm, that's a good question. I would say so far for me, beyond the most difficult assignment any of us had when we were at USC, which was um, writing music for Looney Tunes cues, which was and a Winnie the Pooh cues. Extremely difficult because there's so many ways to do it wrong. Other than that, TV is hard. TV is hard for a lot of reasons. Everything has its difficulties. TV is hard because typically you come in so late. You're fresh while everybody else is like ready to be done. They've been working on it for a really long time. You come in right at the tail end and you're like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And they're like, oh, we have so many things to deal with, and we're on like the 10th cut or something. But more specifically about that, it's kind of like, if you have a bunch of episodes to look at, you have to keep all those things, track of all things, but you get so many cuts. So you'll get fresh cuts sometimes every couple days. And if you have a lot of music done for the episode already, you could take days just going through all your existing music, checking if they changed anything, resyncing all your tracks to the new cut, getting them resubmitted so your client can look at all the new cuts and with the music in it. And if there are changes, communicating with them about it, seeing if it's what they wanted, changing all those cues, doing that again. And sometimes you can get in the process of doing that like every other day, um, depending on how fast they're editing. And that can be really, really difficult. The pace is just kind of crazy for that. Um, I've really, really I've had a lot of fun on TV stuff and film stuff. My favorite thing is probably video game music. There's just such a wide range of things that you could do. I'm a big gamer myself, particularly like sci-fi fantasy games. That's like I that is my thing for sure. Um, yeah, I had another question that was which composers are your biggest inspirations? Another really good one. Biggest inspirations. Well, like I said, John Williams before, there's still John Williams, themes iconic themes for days, for endlessly every movie from childhood. Just the most like he's the master. He can't be touched, which maybe only by like Joe Hisaishi. Like Joe Hisaishi for all the Studio Ghibli work. Joe Hisaishi is up there with John Williams. Um, for the same kind of thing, endlessly beautiful melodies, beautiful music, harm everything is so poignant and touching and just beautiful. Other composers for film, like John Powell is definitely up there. Forever immortal to me for How to Train Your Dragon, which is Chef's Kiss, glorious, glorious score. It Apex, kind of feels like Apex scoring to me because it's a huge orchestra, it's huge arrangement, it has all the Celtic instruments, it has choir, it has all this hybrid stuff, so it has lots of software stuff in there. You have to get just memorable theme after memorable theme, and then it's like wall to wall music, and it's all just beautifully done. Um, and then on the video game side of things, I would say, Jesper Kyd has been my favorite for a really long time. He's probably most well known for establishing all the Assassin's Creed themes in early on. Um, I've heard him talk a couple times. Just a really interesting guy. In like how he approaches blending acoustic stuff, hybrid stuff, processing all this stuff. His music is so cool. He's kind of a hero of mine. Um, but yeah, if anybody has any other questions or wants any advice for anything or love to chat in future, you could just reach out. I can always get hold of me through my website, on LinkedIn. I do use LinkedIn. Um, yeah, I'd just like to thank Molly and Hamlin for having me again. This was so much fun to do. So much fun.
Thank you so much. Hey, Steve, can I ask you one last question? I have a
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Um, and I know we're short on time, so I apologize to everybody. But when you were a student at Hamlin,
Hmm.
could you picture the way that you do work now? Right? Like, is it different than I'm just kind of thinking like how different might it be in another 10 years, right? Like
Yeah.
not I'm asking you to predict the future at 12:30. I'm sorry. But how quickly is the pace of change for the industry in terms of technology and access?
That's a great question. It's really fast. So when I was like applying, when I was still at Hamlin, and like just like getting more into orchestral libraries, orchestral writing for live instruments, a pretty rudimentary, like the sample library and music tech game was quite a bit different than it is now. And to think of all like the things I've accumulated and the techniques I use and the software I use, and that's kind of expected. Yeah, I bet in 10 years it will also be unrecognizable. And of course, I don't want to get into it. There's all the AI stuff too,
Yeah.
which is a huge thing. Like there can be some good, I won't get into that whole, I won't kick that hornet's nest, but
I've
there
refrained from
are,
asking that question.
yeah, there are a lot of like interesting AI music tools that's not like write a song for you, but like, oh, can kind of shake you out of a rut or something and spark an idea kind of thing. I think it's really good for that. Of course, there's lots of AI stuff for audio processing, for mixing and mastering, which like intelligent plugins that will help you with mixes, which I'm like typically there's some that aren't well done. Typically, I will use that stuff for mixing because mixing and production is a huge part. Unless you're making enough money to pay a mixing engineer for you, like mixing and producing is a huge part of your sound and like part of your finished project. So like any tool that helps with that, 100%, I'm good with. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry I threw you a really big question right at the end.
No, that's a great question. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it. For those who want to go look for that sound clip that we couldn't get to play, it was that first episode of Blue Zones from the Netflix show,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Steve. Thanks everybody. We'll have more Leo lectures coming this spring. So watch for an email, watch for follow-up from us. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye,
having me.
Steve.
Bye.